Hi guys, and welcome to Go Roughly Around the World. We're riding around the world with our German Shepherd Moxie on the back of my motorcycle in her K9 Moto cockpit to raise $100,000 for the nonprofit Girl Up. We don't have an episode for you this week because our editor-in-chief, he has a broken hand. Why does he have a broken hand? Well, he was hit by a bus, like a school bus, a chicken bus here in Guatemala. So let's talk a little bit about how it sort of happened and who the players were. Let's do a reenactment of Greg's accident. So what you're seeing here is the Pan American Highway. This took place between Naula and Sololá, which was basically an hour and a half away from Panajachel. Pan American Highway, it's 2 lanes one way and then 2 lanes the other way. It's on a really mountainous area. There are a lot of curves, and we were doing maybe about 50 miles per hour at the time.
About 80 kilometers an hour, yeah.
Yeah. So let me introduce you to our players here. This is me.
Sized in order of importance, maybe?
No! This is me and Moxie. We were riding along. This is a chicken bus. So the chicken buses, they call them chicken buses. They're basically like glorified school buses that are used as public transportation in Guatemala.
They are painted like this, very kind of gaudy and
colorful,
and visible. They often have all kinds of almost like Christmas light type of auxiliary lights that are along the top, along the bottom, the sides, and they're, I mean, flashing and blaring.
Yeah. And then, Greg.
Then there's me. I am the garlic, okay? Not just like brand new nice clove of garlic. I am like the old worn out falling apart garlic.
Anyhow, so we were coming along, we were talking on the intercoms, and as Greg and I were riding, normally like without the bus in the position, we're normally riding like this. I'm in the front and Greg is behind. And we were riding in the left lane because we were going faster than some of the other traffic. And all of a sudden, the bus came up.
So the chicken bus kind of comes from off screen, okay? Out of a curve, and it appears in my rear view mirror because I'm still behind Jess. I come to the right lane and I say on the intercom, why don't you come over, this asshole is coming up fast and wants to pass.
And I saw him in my rear view mirror, my side mirror, and I wanted to come over to the right side because I did see he was coming up close and he was coming fast. So in my mind, I had seen that there was this curve coming up, so I was going to sort of make my turn, my switch into the right lane after this curve. So we were coming along here. The bus was coming. It was coming really fast. And so
I was actually back here.
Greg was back here. And so the bus was coming. As we took this turn,
the bus decides to pass Jess on the inside, like Days of Thunder style, NASCAR, knocks into me, and throws me off to the side. So the bus, let's have the bus continue to kind of roll for a bit. I have now split apart. So what's happened to me here? I have basically gone flying off the bike.
Greg went flying. He was here. The bike was off on the side. It was tilted here. Greg was off in a ditch, and his Tillamook
a little bit behind.
A little bit behind.
Okay. And the Tillamooks are the duffel bags that we have on the back. And somehow, in the way that my bike flipped to one side, and I think all the way over, and then maybe hit on the other side.
Yeah, it was like
it struck the rock strap that like holds it in place, and it just blasted apart, and those Tillamooks went flying, which isn't at all as dramatic as me going flying and ending up face up in a ditch. It's just like it hit that weird and that hard and that like
they were over here.
Coincidentally, that those bags flew up.
So as that was happening, I was continuing, and I was on my way to switching into the right lane here. The bus had slowed down, and when I
knew what he did.
Yeah, so I didn't see Greg come from behind, and so I heard him on the actual communicator on the Cardo.
And as this started to happen, I realized what was happening. I was like, motherfucker.
And that's what I heard, and I just kept yelling, Greg, Greg, and he wasn't responding. When this all started happening, there were a few things that I needed to make sure that I had in hand, which I think can be really helpful for you if you are also in an accident abroad. We carry a spot that has an SOS button, so if you do click that in an emergency, it will alert the local authorities to come to you if it needs to be the fire department or ambulance or whoever it is. In our case here, we were on a really trafficked part of the Pan American, so there were a lot of bystanders. So I had to make sure that I put my oxygen mask on before I dealt with somebody else. And for me, that meant dealing with my bike and Moxie first. So when I arrived on the scene after I turned around, I had to make sure that I was able to actually put my bike down in a safe spot and make sure that Moxie was okay before I got off and started running over to Greg. So I pulled over to the right. The bus had like pulled over just a little bit outside of the curve, and he was on the side there. And then I went and I did a U-turn on the Pan American, and I drove back in and I cut through here. There was a truck that had stopped, that they had seen it right here. And so I came through. They
were sort of blocking this right lane.
And nobody was coming here. I think I did see somebody like way back there. But I came through and I was yelling, Greg, Greg, Greg. And I got to here in front of where his bike was, basically. Yeah. And I couldn't put the kickstand down because of the angle. So I moved a little bit more. And then from here, I was able to put the kickstand down. The guys from the truck got out to see what was going on, and I yelled over to one of the guys to come and help me because I wanted to get down, but I didn't want to get Moxie down yet. I wanted to see what was up with Greg, and so I told him to hold on to the bike because Moxie was still harnessed into her cockpit. I didn't want her like moving back and forth and tipping our bike.
So during this whole time, I am not moving.
When I stopped here, and maybe you heard me or something, I saw a little bit of movement, and I kept telling you to stay, stay, like as if you were Moxie. And I was yelling at you here. And then by the time I got off, you were sort of coming to a little bit more, and you kept trying to, like, you wanted to take off your helmet. And that's when I pulled out I told you to stay still, and then when I realized that you were lucid somehow, I pulled the emergency tabs for the cheek pads, and I was able to slide the helmet off over your head, and then I had my jacket under your head. So in the field, when Greg was laying in the ditch there...
Did we mention that actually where I landed wasn't just sort of on the side here, but it was also in the ditch, like the rain ditch that they have in this part of the Pan American to like the gutter, basically. I ended up in the gutter.
Within 3 to 5 minutes, the ambulance was called on my request by one of the bystanders. And who ended up showing up were the Red Cross. The Red Cross came, I think there were 2 or 3 of them, an ambulance as well, and the local police. So then when I went off and I went to see Greg like that, I looked up and then I saw that the bus was going away.
They're like, fuck this.
That was that. So that was the last that we saw the bus. By that time, the police had already come. This was like 2 or 3 minutes after. There must have been a police car really nearby. He was there right away. I kept saying, call the ambulance. They called the ambulance. The Red Cross, which was their like ambulance, their first responders came out. They were there within like the first 5 minutes. They did everything from asking him questions to determine if he did have a concussion, to wrapping his hand and getting all of that stabilized for him. After they got you up into the other spot here and they lifted you out of the gutter and you were laying like just beside on the road there, I went back and I got Moxie down, and so I basically put her on the leash and then I attached her to a tree, and she just sat there and she was good for the most part. The police, so there now are a few policemen, while everything else was happening and they were just sort of hanging out. Obviously, they wanted to go and see Moxie, and like they sort of egged her on. They do that.
They're antagonizing.
Doggy doggy type thing in Spanish, and obviously Moxie gets really worked up when people do that. She starts barking at them.
People worry about the police being corrupt or a negative influence or negative force. In almost every case that we've had, they have been saviors, helpful, friendly. They were trying to play with Moxie, which was annoying because they're getting her riled up. But these were really good guys with big hearts, and they helped us out.
Yeah.
Now, the helmet took a beating right back here, okay? So, like, there's a good smash in it, which is to say it did its job.
And then we spoke with them in terms of where they were going to bring him. If they were going to bring him to the local hospital or if they were going to bring him to the department head hospital, which is what we ended up deciding. And they took him in the ambulance and they took him off to the hospital.
And then they loaded me up into the Red Cross ambulance. Was it an ambulance or a Red Cross vehicle?
I don't remember now if it was a real ambulance.
Okay, there's holes in this story already.
Yeah. After Greg went off in the ambulance to the Sololaw Hospital, I stayed back with the bike and Moxie.
Motorcycle is like keel up, right? Whenever a tip-over crash or some sort of big accident occurs, bystanders sort of appear. Even if you're in the middle of nowhere, we've had the experience that people sort of show up, okay? They materialize. And it is wonderful, and people are in every case, extremely well-intentioned.
Me and probably 3 or 4 other guys lifted his motorcycle.
The key, though, is they want to help. They want to help quickly. They want to kind of get you up and dust it off as quickly as possible. And so you actually have to manage your team. It's really important. We've had cases where people start trying to lift the bike and they break a turn signal off. We've had them break off
the suspension knob on my bike.
So before doing anything, see who's around you. If they're trying to help, tell them what to do or what not to do. If they start trying to lift, hold on. You check each and every person who's trying to lift the bike and tell them where their hands need to be.
So we lifted the bike, put it on its side stand, but we needed a way to actually get that bike away from the Pan American and put it somewhere.
The rim, the front wheel, the cast aluminum was just shredded apart. I mean, it was just peeled up.
Yeah. We have a workshop where we make the K9 moto cockpits in Panajachel, which is a little bit over an hour from where we were. And so I wanted to get the bike towed to there. In the end, the police who were there, they had a pickup and they offered to let's just put the bike in the pickup and they can bring it down to Panajachel. But if you're in a different situation, you're in a new place, you have no connections anywhere, the thing that we would recommend is going online and just checking to see for a local mechanic shop. There are normally local shops within most of the towns that have connections to the larger brands that you could have your bike dropped off at. Or the other option is, if you just don't have the wherewithal to do that, you can have the police just drop it off at their police station if it's close to where you're staying or whatever it is, and then you can handle it a little bit later on.
We opted for our local mechanic, who's a Suzuki affiliated dealership at a small mechanic shop. We've used them loads in the past to do all kinds of things. And for what was ultimately about $50, they took the entire bike apart, gave it a thorough review, and really gave us a list of, here's what you absolutely need to repair or replace in order to use the bike, here's what you need to do to use it, safely, and here's what you need to do if you kind of want to put it back more or less to how it was. And so that was really helpful to kind of have an understanding before potentially delivering it to a dealership, a large dealership, where they're going to charge you, each hour is hundreds of dollars. My motorcycle was out of your sight, and it was just sort of a bit of a Hail Mary that these Sololá police were actually going to deliver my mangled bike to its final location.
Yeah. In terms of the medical aspect of this accident, they brought him to the Sololá hospital, which is where they did the initial x-rays, where they wrapped up his hand. I wanted them to take him to the city initially, but they said, no, it's a bit far, first let's take him somewhere. So they said Sololá, the department head hospital, is the better one. I got Moxie back on board and we rode together with the police car in front of me. I was behind and we followed all the way to the Sololá hospital.
I had road rash from sort of where my jacket lifted up away from the pants a little bit. And had I not sort of told them about that, they probably would never have found out about it and I wouldn't have gotten it clean. So it's an example of, don't be trusting, but don't be entirely trusting that you're not communicating well what you're feeling or what you're seeing.
And then from there, the next morning, we brought him to Guatemala City to a private hospital where a hand surgeon reviewed him. And from there, that afternoon, they scheduled surgery for his hand and wrist.
Now, we have the good fortune of having sufficient resources to go to a private hospital in the capital where, the doctors are really top-notch. They've been trained all over the world in amazing places. And so you really get a level of care that strikes us as comparable with anywhere, that we've gotten it elsewhere in the States.
Yeah.
When all's said and done, the surgery, the night in the hospital.
An overnight stay.
The series of follow-up appointments, it's coming out to ultimately less than $6,000.
Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope you really enjoyed this rough cut about Greg's accident and him being hit by a chicken bus. If you really love what we're doing, head on over to Patreon. That's where you're going to see some behind the scenes of our previous episodes and get some tips and tricks so that you can dive deeper into the adventure with us. And if you really love what we're doing and you want to support us, head on over to GoRUFFLY.com and buy dog gear for your dog and all the dogs you know. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube and at GoRuffly for Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.